In a commencement speech called "This is Water," David Foster Wallace tells the following story. There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" Fish don't stop to consider water because it's so ubiquitous that it's difficult to even notice. For humans, our water is the collection of discourses that lend themselves to our value hierarchized worldview, born out of long taken for granted assumptions of reality, rooted in the intersection of language, thought, and culture. In Eco-Justice Education, the authors systematically break down how value hierarchies and modern discourses contribute to a logic of domination that has at its heart inequality, and at its mercy many groups of humans, more than humans, and our environment. These discourses permeate our thinking so deeply that, like water, they are hard to notice. They are quietly omnipresent, even in the education system itself. Mechanism, Scientism, individualism, Commodification, Consumerism, Ethnocentrism, Anthropocentrism, and Androcentrism transform students, whether they realize it or not, into objects, classified and preordained, shuffled through a system that depersonalizes and decontextualizes them, isolating them from others and from nature. They become convinced that their failure is theirs alone, that their diversity makes them inferior, that the purpose of their education is to prepare them for jobs that may not exist so that they can buy things that they don't need in a natural world ravaged by mankind. They're shown that knowledge is something to be broken down into little parts, isolated and passively received from those who know best, that the world spins by means of a lever that they have no access to, that truth is something they can only find within themselves. Is it any wonder why many of them feel anxious? Any wonder why many of us feel alone? No example is more clear of how the convergence of these discourses maintains social inequalities than that of high-stakes standardized testing. According to Au and Unequal by Design, these tests promote the division of knowledge into separate, unconnected disciplines, which is indicative of mechanism. Students are reduced to test scores and given value accordingly, which essentially commodifies them. Ethnocentrism exists in the exclusion of non-dominant cultures on the tests, making success harder for those already marginalized. Their failure is then justified by the myth of meritocracy, a product of individualism. Au says, what is lost are students' lives, cultures, histories, and educational differences. These tests effectively mask the existence of social relations and structural inequalities. These problems are bigger than the education system, and to expect schools to directly solve them is senseless. However, formal education can and must contribute to the ending of social injustices. In We Make the Road by Walking, the authors posit that educators who recognize the need for societal change have a responsibility to take action, as neutrality only perpetuates the status quo and therefore social inequalities. So what can educators do to help students fight social injustices? They must begin by promoting awareness, by exposing students to the water that surrounds them, to the discourses that shape the dominant ideas and behavior in society, and by helping students conceptualize how these discourses affect their lives and all life around them. In addition to fostering awareness, educators should help students achieve self-determination by promoting experiential learning that is grounded in collective action taken in the context of the community and natural environment. Through organization, activism, and other forms of participation, students will see that their actions have consequences and will feel empowered to address social inequalities in their community and beyond. The call for a community-based approach to education is echoed in Radical Possibilities by Onion, who calls for educators to directly involve students in organizing and activism. Students first map out their community, making connections with the people, places, and institutions within, in order to understand how the community works as a whole. They can learn history, writing, math, and critical thinking as they discuss the roots of problems and the underlying discourses that support them, and collectively organize to improve their schools and neighborhoods together with local organizations, businesses, and government. This concept of grounding education in place is reflected in the indigenous approach to learning, detailed in Power in Place, which is rooted in the fact that, in direct contrast with mechanistic metaphysics, knowledge comes from the relationships between the people and places around us, and as such is personal, rooted in experience, and connected to all other knowledge. This interconnectedness means that we can't perceive school disciplines as isolated areas of knowledge. These approaches build trust and respect between students and educators. Students, empowered by the ability to make a positive difference in their communities, can counter negative narratives about themselves, gain self-respect, and develop a sense of agency. They'll know that their creativity and diverse perspectives are welcomed and invaluable. Most of all, they'll learn that their power comes from working together, that they have the power to construct their own experiences, and that all sorts of types of knowledge can be employed to fight injustice. We must teach them that the only thing written in stone is life and death, and that everything in between is negotiable, that they make the road by walking, that they can choose how to think and choose which changes are the ones worth fighting for and against. It begins by asking them, "How's the water?"